Welcome to Big Blend Radio's first Friday Toast to the Arts and Parks show with the National Parks Arts Foundation, who are known for their amazing artist residencies in parks across the country. Hey, everybody, we are so excited to have Stan Honda back on our Toast to the Arts and Parks show that we do with the National Parks Arts Foundation. Stan is no stranger to Big Blend Radio. He has been, and no stranger to NPAF, the National Parks Arts Foundation. He's been an artist in residence with them in different locations. And right now, he is in Volcanoes National Park, Hawai'i Volcanoes National Park, which is his first time there. And I think the first time we actually spoke with you, Stan, was when you were in Haleakala, I think.
I think so. Yeah, that
I
was
think
back in 2019.
2019. And everyone, Stan is an amazing photojournalist, an author, and also an astrophotographer, which, by the way, do you know that no online dictionary thinks that's a word? I'm just,
Right, it's sort of a made-up word. For me, I I describe my work as night sky landscapes because it's I'm essentially
mm.
taking landscape pictures at night with the sky as a big element of the image.
I love your photography, and I've been catching up on it, knowing that you're coming on the show, and just I've always loved your photography, but your work, it's something. There's this other thing about photographing at night, and I think you also do a big deal in showcasing the importance of dark sky parks like Chaco Canyon that you've been in, but also like Fort Union, also right, but also showing that life continues on after the sun sets. And
Yeah,
I think we forget that.
yeah, I think one of the national park slogans is see the park after dark. I go into a lot of parks, even here in Hawaii Volcanoes, and I'm driving in after sunset, and I see a lot of people driving out, and I hardly see anybody actually driving in. So I think they're really missing a good part of of the day just by seeing stars. A lot of people come to places like national parks because they want to see stars. They can't see stars. They can't see the
Mm.
Milky Way from where they live, which is the truth for most people in the United States.
Yeah. So, and you're in New York City. You're based out of New York City, right?
In New York City, it's pretty tough to see a whole lot of
Any,
things in a night sky. We can see the moon and the planets and some of the stars, and as you can imagine, it's probably one of the brightest places on Earth.
Mm.
And so I still do a lot of photography there, but it's great to come out uh, to a park where I mean, national parks, I think, especially the ones in more remote places, by design, have very little light pollution. Here, there's almost none. There's a little visitor center lodge at the summit of the Hawaii volcanoes, and then as you go into the park, I don't. As I look around, I don't see very many signs of light pollution in this on this part of the Big Island of Hawaii. So
Mm.
that's really great for seeing stars. I mean, it's great for my photography, but it's great if you just want to sit out and look at stars, look at the moon, look at this comet that's visible in the sky now.
Well, that's what's so amazing, that you're able to capture comments and things like that, stars. I look at your work and I go, wow, I need to take another look outside at night. Turn the light off. Um, because I look at your work and you have like, shooting stars and those kinds of things, and just people also in light and moonlight. And looking at your moon photography, I was showing Nancy, I'm going, look at this. Like you can see the moon, right? And it looks like an orange to me. It's so fascinating because it's got like little round and like things on it, right? And when you look at an orange or an apple, it's got like a little knob at the butt. It's got a butt. It's got a
Yeah,
little button at the butt. And the moon has that, and your photography really shows that. And it's like, I don't know, it makes you really start to think about how we are all spinning around and how the planets work together. And do you think of that when you're photographing at night and getting moonscapes and that kind of work? Like when you're doing that, how humbling it is, really. And the moon has a butt. Sorry.
Right, right. Yeah, I think it's interesting being out there, and because you really kind of you see the universe around us, the solar system, the
Mm,
universe, and to me, it adds a closer connection. I've always been interested in astronomy
mm,
since I was a kid, and so I think just to be out under a sky where you really can see the stars, you could see the Milky Way, you could see a lot of the features of the moon just with your eye, with your naked eye, and
mm-hmm,
you don't need telescopes or binoculars to experience this. And that's one thing I try to get across in the photos. I try to make the photographs look as naturalistic as possible, and
mm-hmm,
so that somebody who might not be able to make it to a place like Hawaii volcanoes or other national parks might be able to see what I experience, what I'm
mm-hmm,
trying to tell in a story
mm,
about that area. And it is kind of amazing what you can see, even from an urban area. You could see the moon easily, and it's worth getting a just even a inexpensive pair of binoculars, and you could kind of look at the moon, and you see all these features and the mountains and the seas and everything where the Apollo missions
mm.
landed. And so
Yeah.
it is quite interesting to really study the sky.
I want to know about the little butt that I'm talking about, though. I want to go and find that out. Like, what is that? What is that that I'm looking at? You know what I mean? That's what you bring this clarity to us that, I go, oh, I want to know what this is, what that is. It's like discovering a whole new world, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm hoping that if people look at pictures like these, they'll want to go out to places and try to
Mm-hmm.
see the things that are out there, see things that you can't see from our cities because there's uh, so much light, so much artificial light, and it's actually kind of we call it light pollution. It's light artificial because a lot of light in urban areas is going just straight up into the sky, and that just doesn't make any sense
Mm-hmm.
because lighting is basically for the land, the terrestrial area, and so if a lot of the lighting can be just directed down toward the ground where it's more useful, then that's actually a way you could start seeing more stars. It happens in
Mm-hmm.
smaller towns when people kind of band together and say, well, let's try to control the lighting a little bit more, make it more efficient, make it more cost efficient, more energy efficient, and then you have less light shooting going straight up into the sky, and you can actually improve your view of the night sky that way.
Well, this brings me to a huge part too, is um, you know, I just interviewed a lady about zoning. She wrote a book, Sarah Bronin. A Key to the City is her book, and she's a zoning specialist, and she worked to change zoning in Hartford, Connecticut. And
Mhm.
part of that was improving night sky, because I said to her, well, there's, oh, that's a whole topic. So everyone just go listen to that whole conversation and get her book, more importantly. Um, but the dark sky thing, it's about, yeah, let's see the sky, let's see the night, let's see what's going on. But they've done so many studies of how, that light, that we, if we don't turn those lights and point them down or turn them off, we're creating pollution. And so it disrupts bats, it disrupts birds, insects, all of these species. And you have a photo, I don't know if it was Canadian geese, but there are birds flying at night, and you have that. And that's what people don't see. They don't realize how many birds are migrating at night. And you have that. I mean, and I don't know anybody else who's photographed birds at night flying over personally. But you
Well,
have it.
yeah, a lot of animals are nocturnal, and so what artificial light affects the lives of a lot of animals. It disrupts their rhythms. It disrupts the human rhythms. I mean,
Mm-hmm,
the bright lights in the middle of the night, our bodies think it's more toward daytime, and so that's can't be good for anybody. Obviously, can't be good for the animals if it affects migration or
mm-hmm,
mating or things like that. And so I think, especially when you're out in parks like these, you actually see what's going on at night. You hear a lot of things, hear birds,
Hmm.
who are active at night, and you see these animals that are out and about at night. I think for them it's probably safer to go out and eat at night since they're hidden a little bit from any predators. But so it's something that you begin to understand as you spend more and more time in
Hmm.
some of these national parks.
Well, that's cool that you're able to do that and showcase it because I think the visuals help those people that are trying to get night skies happening in their communities. You're
Mhm.
you're showing proof of why,
Yeah,
with your
yeah.
photography.
And I know that at many national parks, I've seen a big increase in night sky programs where they'll have rangers
Mm,
uh, both talk about the sky, but also show people the sky with telescopes, binoculars, and
mm,
um, even even taking people out just to give them a tour of the night sky, where the constellations, the planets, the moon,
mm,
how things move in the sky. I think is a great thing, and that the uh, I think a lot of these things, if uh, in urban areas, if lighting is a little bit more controlled, just in terms of where it's pointing, then we can start to see more of these things on an everyday
mhm.
basis in the sky.
So with you in Hawaii now at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, right? You're in the art house. Do you like the art house? Everyone raves about this house. It's apparently very cool where you get
Oh,
to
that
stay.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
the house is great. It's a pretty amazing house, and thanks to
Yeah,
Tanya Ortega for providing this house. It's a
I
pretty
know.
spectacular place.
Everybody is like always raving about it. I'm like, all right, it sounds like I want to move there. But it sounds
Yeah,
really good.
yeah, you
And
should.
and the area that you're in and going into this park, going like Haleakala is a completely different experience, right, from Hawaii volcanoes. And as a photographer and the night sky, and are you doing mostly night sky photography there? What's your mission on this residency?
Yeah, the aim was to do mostly night sky photography. I originally picked October. I was looking at charts and when things were going to happen, but also there was a October 2nd, there was a solar eclipse.
Mm.
In South America, it was an annular eclipse, which is almost a total eclipse.
Oh wow.
It's uh, commonly called a ring of fire, where the moon doesn't completely cover the sun, and you get this you see this ring of the sun. Here in Hawaii, it was predicted to rise as a partial eclipse, and so I wanted to try to photograph that from the
Oh,
park, and I was pretty successful in that.
cool.
And then just other than that, I was mainly trying to do more night sky photography with the landscape, and I think trying to follow the phases of the moon. The moonlight provides a very nice light on the landscape at night, which with the modern digital cameras, that's what really makes this kind of photography possible.
Oh wow. I didn't
With
know that.
film, it would have been pretty tough, but with the modern digital cameras, I was over the years I've been able to sort of improve my technique and the images because of the sensitivity of the sensors and
Mm,
but the
wow.
being in the park is pretty amazing. The landscape is just unreal. Everywhere you go, there's some sort of unbelievable scene, and so it's I'm pretty fortunate, I think, to be in this particular park.
Yeah, because there's ocean, right? And then you've got the calderas, you've got the lava, and the lava is always changing. And I was talking about this with another artist, Victoria Chick, on a different show. And I was saying, the artists love to go to Hawaii volcanoes because it's a constant change. And artists love change. Don't you as a photographer? I mean, you're an artist, and when you see some kind of change, it's like, ooh, now what do we get to do? You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
experience and capture.
you see different things from day to day or over longer periods of time. Unfortunately, there's no lava flowing now. There
Mm.
was some
You
about
would
two
like that,
weeks.
wouldn't you?
Yeah, yeah. Because I'm meeting these other photographers, but I'm also seeing lots of pictures that people have taken over the past years of lava at night with stars and all that stuff. So I'm missing out on that, but but
They have
experience.
this residency open more than once, right? So
Oh
you can
yeah, yeah,
apply again. Would you?
yeah.
just for
Uh,
that?
I think so. I think just to actually see the lava. I've gone out a few nights with a woman that lives here, that lives
Hmm.
near the park, and so she's been here for a lot of the different eruptions and large and small. So, and she was describing all of these photos and different angles and all that. So I was
Oh, cool.
pretty envious of that.
So with this, with looking at lava, right? And you're really good at taking night, obviously, astrophotography and doing this astrophotography. It's night, but you're working off of light and dark, right? And so it's contrasting. But then when you look at lava and photographing lava, you have to find that contrast to make it not just be one page of dark, right? You have to find that kind of work. Does that intrigue you as a photographer to find that contrast to make it work when it's so dark?
Yeah, that's the real challenge, I think, is just trying to make it work at night under the different moon phases. I mean, I've over the years I've realized that as the moon changes, as it gets bigger or smaller, it illuminates more or less the landscape, and the
Mm,
solidified lava here is quite dark. I mean, it's in areas it's often black or
mm-hmm,
a very dark red, and so
mm,
so the moon, I've realized that I have to shoot under a bigger phase of moon than I would normally do for a lot of I do a lot of work in the Southwest, and so the landscape
mm-hmm,
there is a little bit lighter in color than the volcanic rock, and so I'm learning that while I'm here, and just trying to uh, yeah, trying to look at shapes, and there's all these different shapes of lava, which I knew a little bit, but it's when you actually see it in person, it's amazing to see what looks uh, like a thick liquid that's just suddenly solidified right in front of you.
mm.
And so if you can
Wow,
imagine stirring up some like a pudding or something like that, and then having it solidify with the ripples and everything on the surface, and then that's the rock that you're standing
it's
over.
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and those tend to make really interesting pictures because there's texture
Mm,
to the surface, and then there's a very chunky lava, which is a different kind of lava, and that can be very sharp to the touch,
mm.
very spiky, and that often makes for interesting photos as well, and both lit by the moon, but also silhouettes. You kind of see this stark silhouette
Mm.
against the sky of the lava like that.
Wow. So while you're there on the Big Island, are you going to go and visit any historic sites that tie back into your family's ancestry and also your book that really focuses on the internment camps and in the Japanese people were kept in? Is it concentration camps or internment camps? What's the difference? We should probably point that out. Is there
Yeah,
one?
yeah. Well, concentration camp is a good term for what happened during World War II. The United States created, I mean, the
Mm,
definition of concentration camps is you're incarcerating a whole group of people in one area. Which they're
mm.
much different than the camps in Germany. Those were literally death camps. Those
Yeah.
were not. I mean, concentration camp was a euphemism there
Mm,
that was used. And internment is actually a legal term where uh, a foreign national can be held or interned during the time of war by a country, and that did happen here in the U.S. to Japanese, German, and Italian nationals during World War II. But that's different than the what my parents and their family went through. They were incarcerated by their own government. My parents were American citizens, and there was no due process at the time, and so that that's unlawful incarceration in a concentration camp, really.
wow.
Uh,
Wow.
but yeah, I don't have any real family ties to Hawaii.
Okay.
My wife is coming in on Tuesday tomorrow, and so toward the end of the week, we'll spend a few days in Kilo, and I think we might look up some of the historic
Mm.
Hawaiian sites there, and just to see and experience those.
Because it is all so connected. The Pacific Theater is just so connected to what happened. That's why I was wondering about you coming back into Hawaii again. I was like, okay, is he gonna, do some more research? How has it been with your book out now? Because I know I remember talking as you were getting it ready, and I think then you did, and it was out. But what has the feedback been like on that? Because I think where it's such an interesting time about, World War II history because as they say, the greatest generation, right? Is
Right.
is is I know, depending on who you are, right? Is on their way to another, place in time. And so there's a lot of focus on World War II right now.
Mhm.
And I think it's so important that you're putting your story in there because it shouldn't be lost. It's just like I feel the same way about the Navajo code talkers too. Like, there's so many different stories. And if you look at, even Buffalo Soldiers, and you look at, there's just so many through history. We have to look that there was so much diversity in these times, and a lot of times it gets swept under the rug and only one story is being told instead of the multiple stories. And so that's why I think it's so important by what you've done. But have you had some feedback from your book, and people kind of opening their eyes that may not have realized what was going on?
Yeah, the feedback's been pretty good. The book was actually published in 2018. It's
Was
called
it
Moving Wall.
2018? Wow.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So before I had met you and talked with you,
Oh, wow. Why did I think you were still doing it? I don't know why
uh,
then. Okay, whatever.
well, we're still trying to publicize the topic, and
Mm,
we actually ran out of books. We printed, I think it ended up printing about 1,500, and so every once in a while I'll get a request through my website because I talk about the project on my website, and the writing partner that I have, Sharon Yamato, she's based in Los Angeles, and we're actually working on another project right now dealing with the what were called assembly centers. I mean, that was the euphemism the government used. They were the initial detention centers that families were forced to be in when they were forced from their homes. And then they went from these assembly centers to the 10 big camps that most people
mm,
know about. And most of those were in California. And not that many people know about them, and it's really not part of the history. So we wanted to try to highlight that. And we're working on a website showing people where they are and how to get there, and
mm.
current documenting what is at each site now. And we're hoping that that would become something useful that people can use.
I think it's amazing to keep that focus and that people know what's going on. When do you think this next project will be ready for people? Because I think that's what it was that I was remembering then.
Okay, yeah, we're hoping the Assembly Center website will go live sometime in January or February.
Oh,
We're some we completed all of the travel to the sites. So there were actually 17 assembly centers, and so we managed to visit all the sites, and most of them were in California. There were a couple in Washington and Oregon, and one in Arizona. So
mm,
it was
mm,
quite a bit of traveling, but it was interesting to see what was at each site, and because there, as you could imagine, the government has pretty detailed records of a lot of
mm.
stuff. So for the most, for only for one or two, we weren't really able to determine the exact site. With the assembly centers, most of them were either county fairgrounds or race horse tracks at the time, because they
That's really
want,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, no, no.
the government needed an area where they could put several thousand people in one place that was ready like within a couple of months. And
Mm,
so especially in that whole Central California area where most of the Japanese Americans live, there were, as in most areas, there are often big county fairgrounds and or horse tracks. So those were big fenced off areas that could be controlled by the army. So that was the criteria. And so
wow.
so people were forced out of their homes and then initially sent to either a county fairgrounds, or they were sent to a horse track where they often would live. There were a couple of sites where people actually lived in horse stalls that were cleared out of the horses. And so a few weeks earlier there was a horse where you were told to live now. So that experience
Very hygienic,
right,
right?
yeah, that couldn't have been very good. And this was and much of the initial detention happened from about uh, April to August, in August or September of 1942, and so mostly during the summer. And you can
Mm.
imagine the summer at a county fairground or horse track can't be very pleasant.
This is really interesting how you're talking about it too. I mean, even just talking about the assembly, that just it just is a horrible word. Like it just sounds so.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not a. It's like you're gonna. It's like you're being led to slaughter almost. As humans, like everyone's going in the assembly line. Kind of. It feels so mechanical and cold. And we started. This is a weird thing, but as we travel, we do parks and public lands, right? And we
right.
document parks, public lands, and we started because we were doing some interview on prisoner of war camps,
Mhm.
POW camps. And so we were in Texas, and I don't know what got us, but then next thing you know, I ended up with some university download of all these POW camps in Texas. Holy
Oh wow,
cow. Oh,
yeah.
wow. And one of them, we're outside a national wildlife refuge looking at birds and everything. The next thing you know, we're trying to find this marker of where the POW camp was. And it was in an old fairgrounds like you're talking about,
Mhm.
and which is now a school area, but they had what the old water tank was there from the 40s,
Oh,
like
okay.
rusted out, like. And I'm just into going, this is so weird. And there are people doing yoga in the grass around the corner, and I'm going, I don't even know what to say about this. I don't know how to feel about this. There's yoga, war, rusted water tank, and it was, but I didn't have that connection. So I wonder about what you're saying is how it's connected, you know?
Yeah, the at many of the places there is some sort of a marker, and there's often a memorial that was constructed by
Mm-hmm.
survivors over the years, and so at least in a lot of the places there is some recognition that this happened. A lot of the places though don't have any kind of a marker. A lot of the fairgrounds were pretty receptive to our project, and they in a lot of places are they're trying to update their history, and they want to
Mm-hmm.
work with the local. Oftentimes there's still a local Japanese American community, and work with that community to try to place a marker or a memorial to the people who were held there. I think these fairgrounds and racetracks recognize the history that their
Mm-hmm.
site went through, because I think it was just a matter of just telling the community story, and that's what Sharon and I are trying to do, is just keep these stories alive,
Wow.
and also to talk about a part of history, part of American history that a lot of people either don't know too much about, or don't really like to talk too much
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Well, yeah, because if it's not pleasant history, it gets swept under the rug, right?
Right? Yeah, and there's a lot of real uh, misinformation out there
Mm-hmm.
about the whole incarceration. And of course, it sounds like a few days ago, Donald Trump equated uh, the insurrectionists being held in jail from the January 6th insurrection to the Japanese Americans that were held illegally by our government. And so that was just appalling to try to say that this is an equivalent thing. I mean, that's just completely idiotic.
See, that's why history has to be at the forefront. It really does. I mean, it has these stories can't die because it it's just so easy to just be flippant with words
Right.
and
Yeah.
maybe not have that understanding. But I think with what you're doing, what the other beauty of what you're doing is doing the night sky is something you do the landscapes too. You're not just doing the sky, you're doing what's happening in front of you, whether it's people, whether it's a landscape. The scenery could be lava at night, with some stars, as you're in Hawaii. But I think there's something, what happened in World War II was devastating to so many cultures, right? It's a world
Yeah. Yeah.
war. People get hurt. Nowadays, we're kind of in a weird world too, where the whole women and children thing seems to be out the window too,
Right.
in regards to world war. But one thing we can do is look up, and the night sky, in a way, I know the daylight too, but there's something about the night sky and the stars that reconnects us all. There's something magical. There's something connective. It's guiding lights, the North Star, all of that stuff, right? Biblical, mythical, legendary. There's all of this, and there's stories and traditions passed down through numerous cultures around the world. I mean, thousands of cultures that have these stories. And when you put them all together, they're all pretty much the same story, which is interesting to me. And the sky, the night sky, has this magical unity to it. So you could be going through the worst thing in life, right? But you can look up and you see those stars in the sky, you're not alone in life. And I
Yeah.
think that's a beauty in what you do.
Especially the night sky has been used by cultures for eons for things like navigation and, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
storytelling. And there's a whole set of Hawaiian constellations that are much different than the
Oh.
the Greek and European constellations that most of us are used to. There's a whole set of Navajo constellations that are very different than the what we think of as the constellations. I think humans just see patterns in the sky. You see a group of stars and you think, well, that looks like something. It looks like a
Mm-hmm.
dipper. And to another group, that looks like a plow. And to another group, that looks like something else. There's a big constellation called Scorpius, which Greeks, Europeans call the scorpion. Here on Hawaii, it's Maui's hook. That's how Maui created the islands and uh,
Wow.
and slowed the sun down so that things can grow. And so people see different
Wow.
things. For me, I think it's interesting to show the show the sky, the stars, astronomical things in relation to the earth, to the landscape,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it puts it in better human perspective for people. There's a whole part of photography that is called astrophotography, where people take pictures of objects out in space, nebula, galaxies, star
Mm-hmm.
clusters, even things like the moon, and with more telephoto lenses, and so it kind of isolates the object. It isolates these things. I'm trying to show all of these objects in relation to us, to
Mm-hmm.
like the human perspective, showing the landscape. But I mean, most landscape, I think people can have a much familiar perspective. Maybe about how big a mountain is, how big a tree is, how big what a skyline is like in a city, and then so in that sense the stars aren't as far away. I don't think you
Mm-hmm.
don't think of them as that far away, and I
Mm-hmm.
think for the uh, especially at night you really see how the Earth is moving through the universe.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of see how the sky is changing, how we're orbiting the sun. So of course that has a big impact on how the sky is changing. But then uh, how Earth and the solar system, how we're sort of moving through the galaxy and through the universe. And I think it kind of gives a little more perspective on like how we're existing in this whole universe.
It still blows my mind, right? Like, I can't, to this day, I mean, I talk about this on shows all the time, and I'm not a child, but it's still mind blowing that we're spinning, right? It's
Yeah,
still, when you think about it, we're spinning, you know? Every time I
right.
see a friend have, a birthday on Facebook, I'm like, you're spinning around the sun. Enjoy every moment of your next spin, but you're spinning a lot, man. You're spinning a ton
Right.
and faster. And, when you look at a sunrise and it's changing right there and then, you can see it change. Sunset, the moon, when you see clouds go, the moon, all that's changing,
Mm-hmm.
but it's slow compared to what is really happening. And then to photograph it and you're looking at shutter speeds and everything, that's wild on top of it. It's just wild to me how that all works.
Yeah, yeah, and for me, it's almost meditative to be out there.
Mm-hmm.
The work is very slow. I mean, my background is as a photojournalist, and we would do things very rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
You had deadlines and all that, and things are often happening in front of you pretty quickly. But here, I have to use a tripod for everything. I have very slow shutter speeds, and I have to carefully compose everything. And so it's I spend a lot of time waiting for the camera to finish its work and just looking up at the sky. And so even on a cloudy night, if you're in a national park, it's not a bad thing. I mean,
Mm.
you look around
It's
you and
cool.
you can experience this particular area in whatever it has to offer. And with the stars out, it's just a big bonus.
So, doing all that, somehow I believe that you don't believe that the Earth is flat.
Well, I've seen some evidence that it's not. So
I
uh,
just had to bring it up. It's a pet peeve of mine. Yeah, I mean, come on, it's interesting. It's interesting that it's all round too, like not just Earth, but all the different planets are round, like how it all works that way.
yeah,
And
yeah. From a little bit of reading in astronomy, well, books and articles, the when big pieces of matter kind of coalesce, they form a sphere. That's sort of the natural thing that happens,
hmm
and that because there are a lot of like asteroids out there that are just giant rocks, but then if they all kind of gather together, then they end up forming a sphere. That's just how gravity works. There is sort of this phenomenon if you're on a high, for example, a mountain like Haleakala or here
hmm
Mauna Loa or Kilauea at sunset. If the sky is very clear at sunset, if you look toward the east, the opposite direction, the shadow of the Earth will be projected onto the atmosphere. And so
Whoa,
you see this gray band right near the horizon, right at sunset, and then oftentimes above that it'll be sort of orange and fade into blue, and this is opposite
wow.
of the sun, and so that gray band is actually the shadow of the Earth. And if you have a very clear horizon where you can actually see the horizon, like over the ocean or over a distant mountain range, you can see the curve of this shadow if you look left and right, and that's because the Earth is round. So if the Earth were flat, the shadow wouldn't be curved. And so
Yeah,
I I've taken some panoramic photos of this phenomenon, and I show it to people. I said, well, here's some evidence that the Earth is actually round because
I love this. Oh my gosh,
shadow
I'm gonna call
shadows
you
on
up
it.
every time we do a show and someone says something about the flat Earth. I'm like, no, Stan says no. Go to his website, stanhonda.com. You can see.
Right,
But
right.
you know,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
there's other pieces of
yeah.
evidence to show that we're not, like you said, we're spinning around. So that it's hard to think that if we were on a flat surface that we would have things like
It's
sunrises, sunsets, and
yeah,
in a regular manner. So that's
yeah.
funny.
It's just funny, but yeah, being in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, and that's like a bucket list for people, just travelers to go and do, right? It's a huge thing to go get to Hawaii, which I know that you've been there before with Haleakala with the National Parks Arts Foundation as an artist in residence. What was it about this park that you specifically were drawn to go to, and what are some of your highlights?
I think I was interested when I applied for the residency, just about the volcanic activity. I think like
Mm,
everybody, and as I was reading more about the park, it seemed like a really fascinating place. There are all these different uh, ecosystems as you go from the higher altitude to the lower altitude. I mean, you start out
mm,
at 4,000 feet where the main crater is, and you go down to sea level. So it's a whole different area. And as I'm driving through the park, as you drive down Crater Road, which goes from the visitor center all the way to the ocean, you actually drive through what looked like rainforest. You're driving through
mm.
rainforest, and then all of a sudden, the land, it'll be this huge lava field, and there'll be a few trees here and there and a few plants where a lava flow has come through. And so the start, I mean, literally, the forest will stop, and it'll be a huge lava flow, and then the
That's
forest will,
wild.
yeah, then the forest will start again, and then you're driving through a rainforest, and so the experience here is just pretty amazing. Weather is changing constantly. It must drive the weather people crazy because it's hard to actually make a forecast, I would think, because I read the forecast, but then you show up and it's cloudy and until it's clear, and it could be misty. I mean, I was setting up one night and all of a sudden it feels like it's raining. It's like you're in the middle of a cloud. It's just misting on you. So I stopped for a while, and then it started to clear up. So it's sort of this wild
You just
experience
have to
being,
go, and then it is what it is. Yeah, it's going to do
yeah,
what it
yeah.
wants. Wow.
But for a visitor, it's and the park itself is very close to Hilo, one of the major cities. I think it's about a 35 minute drive. So for visitors, it's relatively easy to get to. I'm kind of surprised at how there aren't as many visitors as I had expected.
Really?
They
Hmm.
did say that this was sort of one of their off, the slight off season. I think September, October, and then
Mm,
as it gets colder in the northern hemisphere, more people come to Hawaii. So then
mm,
they said November, December start to get busy.
mm.
But I
Okay.
had actually expected more people, and but like I said earlier, for me, as I come into the park at sunset, everybody's really leaving. They probably think, oh well, there's
Yeah. Well,
nothing to see
I
after
kind of
dark.
I like it to be quiet, but I know that you do, MPAF has always got artists and residents doing some kind of event. During COVID, that was a little difficult, right? But now the events are, and I know that this is airing after the event, but I just want to touch base on what you're going to be doing, because aren't you doing some engagement for park visitors?
Yeah, they asked me to do a public program on October 26th on a Saturday at
Mm-hmm.
at, at the Kahuku unit. There's a separate part of the park called Kahuku
Mm-hmm.
that's closer to the closer to sea level, and it's actually in a different part, closer to the house that I'm staying at, and it's a beautiful part of the park. I went in there a few times during the daytime, and then and took some pictures, and it's just beautiful. It's much more like a rainforest, and
Oh, nice.
there is a big area where there's a lava flow from a, I think it was in the 1860s. There was a big lava flow there, and there's also it was a part of a ranch
Mm-hmm.
where they herded
Oh.
cattle, and so that's popular on different islands. And then I think
Hmm.
maybe 10 years ago or so, maybe 15 years ago, the Park Service then acquired the Kahuku area and made it part of the
Mm.
Hawaii Volcanoes National Park.
And
It's still,
protected.
yeah, it's part of it's still on the side of the volcano that's part of the main part of the park. So I'll be giving a
Mm.
public program there and just talking about a little bit about the work that I've done in the national parks, and then showing some of the more recent pictures that I've taken here at volcanoes.
Awesome. And people can follow you on Instagram too, so they can see the work you do. And, it's
Yes,
awesome. I mean, you just bring this whole other world and you open our eyes, literally, to see things that, we forget about. So many people are just watching TV at night. You know,
right, right.
it's like
Yeah, I
there's
try
more
to.
than Netflix, y'all. I'm just saying,
Right,
you know.
yeah,
So
yeah. I
you
think
you really do.
I'm
Hmm.
out there. I think when most people aren't out, and I think trying to show people what you really can experience if you go out after the sun sets and spend a few hours out there, and you could really see some amazing things up in the sky. I think.
I I love it, and I want to do more. And I think the way cell phones are even getting so many apps, and they have so many ways that you can actually zoom in now, and you can get telephoto lenses for your cell phone now, your smartphone. Um,
All right.
People are trying to do more and more at night, so I think it's they're when it's accessible to do, you're going to see more people do it. But one thing is the light that photographers sometimes use to take night photography, if everybody starts doing that, that's not necessarily a plus, right? So, but not everyone's doing that at this point. So it's not too much of a worry, but is there a concern about creating light pollution as a photographer at night?
Yeah, you might be talking about light painting in photos where people light up some parts of the
Mhm.
picture, or are we talking about the
At
artificial light in general?
artificial, they bring in light to light up and then photograph.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. I've always been a natural light photographer anyway throughout most of my career, and so to me, the national parks really are about preserving uh, the night skies,
Hmm.
preserving nature. In fact, there's a whole uh, night sky and natural sounds division of the national park that tries to preserve both a good sky and also the just the natural sounds of the
Hmm.
park in terms of animals and nature. And I know that in a lot of photographers will do what's called light painting. You essentially take a flashlight, shine it on the landscape to try to get the landscape lit as you're shooting pictures of the stars. And to me, that kind of defeats the purpose if you're trying to
Yeah.
advocate for dark skies because you're in a protected area that has minimal light, artificial light, and then now you're introducing a bright flashlight. Or and sometimes people use even stronger, very high intensity lights, which doesn't seem to make sense at all. I've never seen a really
Hmm.
good one. They look all sort of artificial. To me,
Yeah.
the moon is the way that I light my landscape. It's the natural light, essentially sunlight reflecting off the moon. But it's also something that happens in nature,
Hmm.
something that which is my style is trying to create it as naturalistic image
Hmm.
as possible. There are a lot of parks. Uh, a lot in the western part of the U.S. Arches, for example, Arches National Park, they have banned light painting. Yellowstone and Grand Teton have banned light painting, and so in Arches it got very bad because Arches is a easy place to get to and very popular with
Hmm.
people trying to shoot night pictures. And so the light painting was banned, and I think that's a good thing because it just I, I, I think for somebody who's not a photographer who's trying to just experience the night sky, having people shine flashlights all over the landscape just seems a little disturbing and pretty annoying. So I think just for the general enjoyment of people who want to enjoy a natural
Hmm.
landscape, it's probably best to try to keep all artificial lights off in a national park.
I think for the bats, the birds, the bugs, I mean, it
Oh
affects
yeah.
them. It really
Oh,
does. So
yeah, definitely.
yeah. So I think you're really right on that. I'm glad we brought it up because it's why national parks are, and for you to be able to go out there and do what you do is, this special thing. You get to immerse yourself for a month as an artist in residence, go out there and really understand, and you're in that peace and solitude part of it. When everyone's going home, not understanding the other side of it, you're there. But yeah, the parks are doing a lot on, like you were saying, taking care of the night sky, doing ranger programs at night,
Mhm.
and the sound. That's something, I find it very difficult to find places that are quiet to get a bird call, a recording with it without some kind of noise. And all the other noise is always a human noise.
Right.
So light pollution, sound pollution, they're real. It's a really real thing that affects the species, the plants, the birds, all of it, and our own time there, like you said.
Yeah, definitely. If you think about it, I mean, there's almost, especially if you live in more of an urban or suburban area, there's almost
Hmm.
no time that you can't either hear something artificial,
Hmm.
man-made, or see something that's artificial, a light, something like that. And at least coming out to a park like Hawaii Volcanoes, I could drive into the park at night, and you almost feel very isolated because
Hmm.
if it, at some parts of the park you could see some of the town lights from distant towns, but if you don't see those, all you see are the stars and the landscape, and uh,
Nice.
and you hear whatever animals or mainly wind. It can be quite windy here, so oftentimes
Hmm.
the noise that I hear is wind. But that's a natural
Mm-hmm.
sound, and I think to experience something just a nature for even just a short period is to me quite relaxing and also just sort of interesting when you immerse yourself into it.
I love it. I love it. Now, have you tried the coffee? Apparently, the coffee in the area is good.
I'm not a coffee drinker, which I think people are
Oh,
shocked. I
Stan.
think so.
Stan, you're in
My
coffee land.
I
What?
know. I'm in the middle of Kona coffee land, and there's seems like and apparently there's lots of different kinds of coffee grown here on the Big Island. And I had two friends of mine visited in early October, and so I bought them coffee, and they said it was great. They said, "Oh, this is great coffee." So, but my wife's a big coffee drinker, so she'll
Okay.
she'll enjoy that. But yeah, I'm
What
a
what have you enjoyed? What have you enjoyed there just out of being in somewhere different? How have you enjoyed it aside from the art? Is there good food? Like what's been your like, ooh, this is cool.
Well, my big memory from being on Maui are the plate lunches in terms of culture and food. And so for me, it's fun to be in a place where I can order the plate lunch. It's basically a kind of variation of meals all across the country where you get meat and you get two side dishes. And the side dishes on a classic Hawaiian plate lunch is white rice and macaroni salad. So
Oh.
you really load up on the carbs, and the combination is pretty amazing. And usually there's something like shrimp. They do roasted pork really well here, so I
Mm,
like pulled pork, and the roasted pork here is great. The other great experience I have near the house, there's a Whittington I think it's a county beach, and
okay.
it's basically a beach with there's no sand. The shoreline are
Hmm.
lava rocks, and so
Oh,
uh,
cool.
you have to wear sandals as you're going into the water. But it's there's actually
Hmm.
a cove. There's a breakwater of big stones and rock where the waves crash against, but it creates this cove where the water is relatively still. It kind of the tide comes in and out, and it's a great place to sort of sit in the water and relax. And you could and I've been there a bunch of times, and as soon as I sit down for a few minutes, all of a sudden there are all these fish that swim around your legs. And then the other day I saw two big sea turtles just swimming through the cove, and so
No
that
way.
was amazing. I'd never
That's
been that
epic.
close. Yeah, never been that close to a sea turtle, and these things were huge, and they were just swimming through the water,
No
and
way.
it's so to experience that was pretty amazing.
Wow. So this is like a whole new thought of artist residencies, people coming, they get this beautiful house and a beautiful park just down the road and a beach. Come on, this is sounding really good. Would you do it
Yeah, well, yeah.
again? Would you
I
go back to
highly
Hawaii Volcanoes National Park again?
oh definitely, because I think
Or you
the
have
other
to
day
still get that. Yeah, you have to. Yeah, you're not done.
right, yeah, I still have another week, but also I was thinking that as much as I have explored it over 3 weeks, there's still a lot that I haven't seen.
Mm.
I mean, the park itself, I mean, geographically it's large, but even just the places that you could easily get to, the driving and mostly the trails. There's a lot of hiking trails,
Oh, cool.
um, and I've met people. I met a group of people at the Eclipse. They who invited me over to dinner later because they live in the town of the Volcano Village, which is right next to the
Okay.
park. And since and they're probably not even maybe 5 minutes from the park entrance. And I said, well, how often do you come into the park? And some people said, oh yeah, I go in 2 or 3 times a week to the park. And
That's
so
cool.
because they also do the hiking trails, but they really know the park well, and I think it'd be fun to come back and see a lot of the different parts that I might have missed this time.
Mm. And it might have changed by the next time you go,
Yeah,
you
yeah, I
know.
definitely want to come back. In fact, one photographer that I've been going out with, she said, "Oh yeah, if you hear about the lava flow, just get on a plane and come."
Yeah,
So
really,
that's
exactly, right? It's like this epic thing, you know. I love
yeah.
it. Well, Stan, it is so good to reconnect with you and have you back on the show. And I think you just got to keep doing more residencies. How many have you done now? Like,
I think
trying to
I've done
think.
about seven in the national parks, and I've been pretty fortunate to be able to do this because it's great to be able to just live and work in a park for an extended period. You really kind of get some insight into the park and the people
Mm.
and the cultures and everything.
I love it. Well, everyone, stanhonda.com is the website for Stan. And of course, go to nationalparksartsfoundation.org. They're an awesome, awesome organization. We
Yeah,
love what they do, how they support artists of all medias, right? So you could be a poet, you could be a painter, you could be a sculptor, a dancer. I mean, all of that. I don't know about AI now, so that's a whole thing. How do you feel about AI, Stan, with photography? Ooh.
well, it's sort of interesting because the on certain parts it's helped out, like the image processing part, but I think people are essentially are either creating or eliminating stuff from their pictures, and to me that's not really photography. I mean, artists might consider that art, but I think I'm more of a I think traditionalist just in terms of what photography can do. And I think to me, the creative part is being out there with your camera and trying to create
Hmm. And
something,
composing. Yeah.
composing, and what are your ideas? What are you trying
Mhm,
to tell in a story, in a picture, and
mhm.
that the if you're spending your time on a computer trying to create an image, you're not spending enough time, I think, out in the world trying to.
You're using someone else's art to do it
Yeah,
if you're doing
well,
AI.
yeah, that's bad. And the
Mhm.
so it's
It's
well, it's
wonky.
also yeah, you want people to be able to trust the image that you've produced, that you've
Hmm.
made, and I think that the AI might have a real bad impact effect on that.
I think it's interesting because I always look at the arts as being the truth tellers of time, you
Mm,
know, whether it's the feeling of the people or, that kind of thing. Maybe it's historically what's happened. Musicians will sing a song that have the lyrics that tell the truth, right?
right.
Um, Photos, obviously, you're a photojournalist, and now through all this digital stuff, which is great, like you're saying, having digital cameras allows different, things to be done,
Mm,
but it's also has this negative thing of messing with someone's art, messing with it, like it can be photoshopped or done. So now we have distrust at times in photography, which sucks. It just
y-
sucks. And so that's why it's so important to me. I'm glad you're on the show and talking. So, and what NPAF does is because that's keeping the authenticity of art alive. Now, if an artist or photographer wants to manipulate their photos after going into a park and do something totally creative with that, that's not what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about, and I think the audience knows. It's like you're telling the truth. Even if you completely manipulate everything, you're still doing it from what you saw or want to create. And NPAF allows this to be there so that it's not someone sitting at home going, oh, look, I'm going to steal Stan's photo over here and manipulate it and make it look cool and sell it on a t-shirt. You know what I mean? I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. I think NPAF is good. I think because it allows an artist to go to a great location, a national park,
Mm,
and do your art there, create your art there, and
yeah.
show people what the park is, show people what the experience in a park is like, from whatever medium that you practice. And so it's to me it's been a great thing to be involved in.
And with your work, I mean, how many people are going to go to Hawaii Volcanoes National Park? Number one, how many people get to go? Number two, and then be there at night and be able to capture what you're capturing, and have the skill and the years that you've got in your, your craft. I mean, that's a craft. It's it's not just a click.
Yeah, I'm hoping people can either experience the park through the photos that I take, or it maybe inspire them
To
to
go.
come out here and experience it,
Exactly.
yeah, for themselves and drive into the park after sunset rather than drive out and
Yeah.
spend some time in the night. Because I mean, literally, I go to all these different locations and I often don't see anybody at the
Mm.
locations. Every once in a while, I will see. Uh, one or two cars, and but you definitely and this happens in almost all the national parks that I've worked in is that you go to an overlook or a site, a lake or a trail, and there's nobody there. Everybody's gone for the night, and then they come
Everyone,
back during
Stan
the
is
day.
lonely. Go to the parks at night with him. He wants to hang
Right,
out.
right,
He wants
yeah,
someone to
yeah.
talk to while he's
Uh,
working.
I'll be there with the camera.
Yeah, yeah, you'll find him. Thanks so much, Stan, and enjoy the rest of your time there. And we can't wait to for next time because there will be a next time. I know there will, right? There'll be a next time for sure. So
Yeah,
thank you so
yeah.
much.
Hope so, Lisa. Thanks very much for having me. I really appreciate
Yeah.
this.
Everyone, again, nationalparksartsfoundation.org. Check them out, especially if you're an artist, but also they accept donations and support because they support the artists. They get them the lodging, they do all of that. So check them out. Thanks so much. Thank you for joining us here on Big Blend Radio's first Friday Toast to the Arts and Park show with the National Parks Arts Foundation. Learn more about their amazing park artist residency programs. Go to nationalparksartsfoundation.org. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.